So I, the rest of the story that happened after the baptism, that that happened about 2 weeks following the baptism. I was flying to Miami from Nassau, and I was looking in the back of the Bible. I had my first Bible. I still have the copy of the Bible. This was back in 1981, and I was looking in the back of the Bible, and it showed where Jerusalem was, and it showed where Bethlehem was, and I was looking at that area in the back of the Bible, and I'm going, I want to go there. I want to go and see this place that Jesus is talking about, or that the Bible is talking about, referencing Jesus. So I got off of the plane. I went to the ticket counter, the TWA ticket counter in Miami, and I had some unused refundable tickets, and I went up to the counter and I exchanged those tickets for a round trip ticket to Israel, to Tel Aviv. And I went back to the Bahamas, and I took care of my 5-year-old. Actually, she was probably, no, she wasn't 5. She was about 3 years old at this time. So I went back to the Bahamas and I took care of my 3-year-old. I'm not going to give her name, but I took care of her, gave her to a babysitter, and then I made my arrangements to go to Tel Aviv. And I flew from Nassau to Miami, and I was getting ready to get on a plane that flies from Miami to New York, and then from New York to Paris, and Paris to Tel Aviv. And before I got on the plane, I had about $1,000 in my pocket, and I had been fasting for 2 days. I didn't know what fasting was, but it sounded good, and I wanted to be all in. and I've got the headset I have the Bible, that I'm listening to the Bible in my earbuds, and I'd never read or listened to the Bible before, but it was just like, it was totally coming in, and I'm listening to all of this. And before I got on the plane in Miami, I went into a men's store and I bought 2 outfits. I bought 2 members only outfits where the top matches the bottom. And then I bought an expensive leather jacket, and I bought a camera. And I spent every penny that I had in my pocket. I didn't have 1 penny left. And I went and boarded the plane because I wanted to go on total faith. I wanted to go and trust that God was going to take care of everything that I needed. And so I was fasting. So when the stewardess would ask me if I wanted a snack, I said no to that. I drank tea. I just drank just straight black tea and water. And I fasted the whole time there. And when I landed in Tel Aviv, I'm taking pictures, and these young boys ran up to me with these machine guns and swatted my camera down and told me I couldn't take pictures because this was a very volatile time in Israel back in 1981. And so I said, okay, no more pictures. And they, ushered me up to the TWA counter, and my luggage never showed up from New York. And so I went to the TWA counter after the security let me go. I went to the TWA counter and told them my luggage didn't show up. And they said, oh, Mr. Free, I'm sorry about that. Where will you be staying so that we can send it, forward it on to you? And I said, well, I don't know where I'll be staying. I'm walking to Jerusalem, and I'm just going to sleep wherever I was going to go find where the sepulcher was. I wanted to go where Jesus walked. So I'm just going to walk up there. And they said, well, it's not just down the street. It's up in the mountains. It's up in the hills, and it's quite cold up there. And I told them that I don't have any money. And they go, you don't have any money? And I said, no, I came totally on faith. I want to just see how God takes care of me. And they gave me a TWA jacket so I wouldn't be cold. And they gave me $20, a $20 bill. And that gave me a bus ride to Jerusalem. And so I got on a bus for $13 and got a one-way ticket to Jerusalem on this bus. And I got off the bus, and I I must have asked someone where a place to stay was, and I found a place to stay that was, it wasn't very fancy, and I don't even think it had electricity, but it was only $4 for the night. And I stayed in there. Must have had 6 or 8 inches of blankets. I was warm under the blankets, and I was still listening to the Bible. And that morning when I woke up, they told me that the room came with a meal, and I got an inner prompt that says, now it's time to eat. And it was an egg and something they call hubits, and I dipped it in this oil, and I had the egg, and I began to eat. And when I came out of that place, I went looking for the sepulchre where Jesus was laid in the tomb, and they built a church over that area since then. And so I went in to this thing to do the tour, and I had just a couple of bucks left, enough for the tour. And I walked in, and I'm taking pictures of all the cool artifacts and the gifts that were given to kings over the years to this church. And this young Arab boy approached me when I walked in and sort of made friends with me. And I spent several hours in there in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And then I came back out, and this young Arab was still in there. It was still outside, and I warmed my hands by a fire it was a 55-gallon drum that had a fire burning in it. I warmed my hands because it was a little bit cold, and this young man invited me to some kind of a place where they were smoking out of the bongs. They were smoking something out of the bongs, but he invited me to come talk to him there, and I told him my story, and he was so astounded by the story that I was telling him that he told me about his sister, who was a Christian in Bethlehem, and his brother-in-law. And when I told him that I didn't have any money, I just spent the rest of it in the sepulchre, he walked me up to a taxi cab driver, paid the taxi cab driver, spoke to him in Hebrew, told him where to take me in Bethlehem, and the driver took me right to the door of his sister's house. I knocked on the door. I said, "Hi, I'm Bill Free from America, and your brother told me to come here and said that you guys are Christians." And so I stayed with this family for 2 weeks. I bathed in their house. I met their children. They had no running hot water. They boiled water and poured it in a bathtub. And I met all kinds of people on the West Bank, and I met people in Jerusalem. I went to people's homes that lived in caves. The front of their house was just like a structure that was attached to a cave, and they lived in caves. It was just an amazing trip for me. I spent 2 weeks there, and then they paid for me to go back to Tel Aviv, get back on my scheduled flight, and I went back to the Bahamas to be with my daughter, and everything changed from there, because then from there I moved to Florida, and I made a residence in Boca Raton, Florida. I became a general contractor in Florida. I built a building business in Boca Raton, Florida, building millions of dollars of homes, and I remarried there, and I built a family. And it just blossomed from that experience. And and when I started that prayer before going to Israel was about 3 months, 3 or 4 months before I was in Israel, and then back to the Bahamas and back to Florida. It was a living miracle that just there are miracles upon miracles that I could spend an hour telling you about the many miracles that were in my life because I was willing to just trust. And that's my story.
And you're about to embark on another adventure.
I am. I think it's part of my DNA to watch how the universe conspires to support us in everything that we do. And I am getting ready to walk, hitchhike, or bus ride from Portland, Oregon, down to Santa Barbara, and from Santa Barbara across the entire United States, all the way up to New York City, with my friend James Francis Twyman. And he will be performing 12 one-man musicals of St. Francis of Assisi, and I will be his drone pilot, his cameraman, and I'll be his opening to his act of his one-man musical. He's going to teach me how to sing a little bit. I'm not a, I'll just be winging it. But the important part of this whole 4,200-mile journey that's going to take 2 months is that we're not taking any money and we're not taking any credit cards. And see, I know how this works. So I am not concerned at all. I am going to be just kind of sitting back and watching how God works. And it's the God of your understanding. I would say the universe is, we're not separate from what God is. So my heart's desire is to be a witness of the living experience of what God is in everything that I see. So that's my other miracle. I'll tell you more about that. I'm going to keep a log, and I'm going to stay in touch with people on Instagram and on Facebook and let people know how we're doing on our journey.
Well, I can hardly wait to hear about that, and I know it's going to be absolutely fabulous. Thank you, Bill. And I guess we've said our goodbyes once already, but we just wish all of you a very happy holiday and to know the joy of trusting God and living in faith.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.